I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is the How to Rock Astrology audio series. The information in this recording is copyrighted by Dustin Cormier, 2015, all rights reserved, except where noted in the recording. The following information on ascendant or rising signs comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Guidelines to interpreting the ascendant. Although the ascendant is of deep and pervasive importance for each individual, there is no denying that it must be related to the rest of the chart, and especially to the sun sign, in order to understand it thoroughly for a particular person. The sun, after all, is the core identity, the very center of the consciousness, the way we assimilate much of our experience, whereas the ascendant, although it varies in importance from person to person, is not as central to the person's nature. It shows, among other things, the approach to life, but the sun shows life itself. The ascendant must serve the purposes, values, and creative goals of the sun for the individual to function happily and fully. A useful tool for understanding how a person's ascendant and sun sign interact is to compare the elements of the two factors. For example, a Cancer sun sign person with a fire sign rising is usually far more extroverted, forcefully expressive, and confident than a Cancer sun individual with, say, a more conservative, self-protective earth sign rising. For another example, an air sign sun person with a water sign rising may appear much more emotional than he or she really is, whereas a water sign sun person with an air sign rising may appear far more detached and less emotional than he or she really is. It should be pointed out that people are often relatively unaware of their ascendant nature as compared to their sun sign. In that sense, the ascendant is a factor that can be consciously developed further over time and consciously utilized to aid one's self-expression. I've known people who are relieved to find what their rising signs were, since it finally gave them a way of identifying a very deep but only semi-conscious tendency in themselves. In some cases, the qualities and abilities symbolized by the ascendant were just beginning to emerge, and learning the astrological keys to this factor helped personal development greatly. I should emphasize here that perhaps more than with most other factors in the chart, the early environment can encourage or suppress the expression of the ascendant's energies, since it is a primary channel with which one interacts with the outer world. The reader should view the following comparative evaluations as guidelines and as questions to explore, rather than as rigid statements of absolute truth. Cancer modality or quadruplicity. The Cancer modality is cardinal, the active energy mode. There are exactly 4 of these active signs in the zodiac belonging to the cardinal modality. These include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and they all share similar characteristics. The 4 cardinal signs exhibit more restlessness than the other 8 signs. There's a sense of, I've got to do something, and a tendency to be enamored by activity for activity's sake. These active signs share the challenge of identifying the source of their behavior. Are they motivated by true inspiration, or are they rushing around because they feel like the crap's going to hit the fan? Or maybe they're trying to avoid feeling lazy and unproductive. The element of the ascendant. The element of the ascendant reveals the quality of energy flow directly vitalizing the physical body and the overall approach to life. Fire or air signs rising tend to conduct energy, encouraging active self-expression and dynamic expenditure of energy. Earth or water rising signs tend to conserve and resist the flow of vital energies, and hence indicate self-containment, sometimes self-repression, and the tendency of living within oneself. Water signs rising, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Most easily influenced by the environment and by other people. Sensitive, moody, wary because of a strong feeling of vulnerability and likelihood of being hurt. Protective of self, but also of others one cares about. Sympathetic, feels others' emotions immediately and forcefully. Very private, lives deeply within oneself. Cancer ascendant. A sympathetic, mild demeanor, but the sensitivity and sympathy are often directed just as much toward oneself as toward others, often being oversensitive to hurts and slights. In this sense, Cancer rising seems to exhibit a more superficial type of empathy for others than Cancer sun, whose feelings tend to go deeper and whose sentiment is more personally touching. Cancer ascendant often seems even more reserved and private than the Cancer sun person, who, by virtue of his or her great acting ability, can often seem quite social and outgoing. The Cancer rising person is usually a strong introvert, although I have seen cases where the moon was in Leo or a similar extroverted sign, and the more outward-oriented tendencies were predominant. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's classic text, Astrology, a Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Cancer on the Ascendant. Timid and quiet, especially in early life. Sensitive and retreats when threatened. Fond of traveling, but must always have a home base from which to operate. Sympathetic, receptive, passive, and psychic. Responds to life through feeling, not thinking. Moods changeable, up and down like the tides. Easily upset, but does not stay disturbed for long. Note the sign the moon is in and its aspects. If the moon is angular, meaning the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, the individual will be involved with the public mass consciousness in some way. A tendency to indigestion when emotionally disturbed. The solar plexus reaction upsets the juices of the stomach. The following information comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. He's the willing worker. Thin-skinned and sensitive, with a gentle demeanor, cautious Cancer is always politic and found often working long hours in public places, taking advantage of an ability to avoid giving offense. People with Cancer rising get the job done in a utilitarian, worker-bee fashion. As children, they love to earn and stash money, and even in youth, they have a penchant for saving rather than spending. Cancer children are usually industrious, sensitive, cautious about almost everything, and quite loving toward their mothers. Sentimentality towards the past helps these folks learn from their experience, but sometimes leaves them emotionally inhibited, hesitant to embrace today's opportunities. In these cases, they live in the past rather than learn from it. They make themselves scarce if faced with rejection, but are cagey when threatened and skilled at avoiding intensity. They can be very non-committal. Don't fence me in, don't back me into a corner. Physical type. Short shuffle in the walk, sometimes poor eyesight. Favored colors. Olive green, forest green, smoky gray, silver. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's Astrology, a Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. The significance of the Sun and the Sun sign in astrology. The symbol of the Sun in astrology is a circle with a dot in the middle. This is a very deep occult spiritual symbolism. The circle represents the eternal self that did not start here and does not finish here on earth. The dot in the middle represents the divine spark at the center of every living cell, the light which lighteth every man which cometh into the world. It is the point of light at the center of every living cell. In the blueprint, the sun represents the main expression of the individual, the heart and core of beingness. The sun has a different effect on individuals born at different times of the year. According to the sign and house in which the sun is placed, we are able to judge the general vitality and physique, the qualities of leadership, and the individual's ability to succeed in life. In a personal chart, the sun represents the basic drive for significance, the will, male relationships and female charts, especially with the father, vital energy coming from the etheric levels and prana, fuel on which the total personality operates, urge for power, constitutional strength, and finally, a powerful sun means very great power to do and to be. Keywords of the Sun: will, individuality, spirit. The Sun is the significator of the spirit in man, the beingness or isness of life. It rules the basic drive for significance, the will to be. Physically, the Sun is the sustainer of life, giver of light, heat, and energy. More than anything else in the chart, it shows the will, man's highest expression. Its aspects show deep character traits, the chief ambitions. It needs aspects to the planets for strength of expression in the horoscope. As the Sun moves through the signs, its return to the sign of its exaltation, Aries, the eastern horizon, marks the beginning of the astrological year. Springtime brings the release of a new cycle of life. As the Sun moves through the houses, its return to the eastern horizon is the beginning of the astrological day, sunrise. The Sun sign in its element. The following information comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. The Sun sign's element is usually dominant in considering the overall psychology of a person. This is so because the Sun sign's element reveals the attunement of one's basic vitality, identity, and power of self-projection, as well as the fundamental quality of his or her consciousness. The element of one's Sun sign reveals the basic inner force motivating everything we do. The element of the Sun sign also gives insight into how any individual sees life itself and what expectations they have of the life experience. Scorpio Sun. Scorpio is a water sign. These are the common characteristics of people born with the Sun in water signs. Basically motivated by deep emotional yearnings and desires. Recharges energy through intense emotional experience and intimate involvement with people. Interpretive guidelines for the Sun in Scorpio. Creative energy penetrates surface experience through intense emotional power and intuition. Needs to express one's transformative energy, often reforming the status quo. Craves for intensity, involving the core of human experience, often seeking this in deep, merging, usually highly sexual relationships. Level of vitality is connected to constant inner compulsive desires, sometimes obsessions. Flow of creative expression can be hindered by emotional fixations, reluctance to be open, and fear of losing control. This final article comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Scorpio, born mid-evening. Scorpio with Cancer rising. Here's the old still waters run deep at work. Cancer's feel my way along blends well with Scorpio's look for the hidden meaning. Scorpio, born mid-evening. Scorpio with Cancer rising. Here's the old still waters run deep at work. Cancer's feel my way along blends well with Scorpio's look for the hidden meaning. There's a lot of introspection and uncertainty here. These people keep most of their emotions under wraps. They hold on to their experiences and aren't quick to share what's on their mind. When the Cancer personality's willing worker is fueled by Scorpio's full-blown gusto, extra hours studying accounts at the office or planting extra rows of crops in the field are second nature. They can barely stop themselves from showing up early and staying late. Cancer often gravitates toward public places, so these Scorpios might be naturals at running restaurants, stores, or small businesses that deal directly with consumers. They're wonderful hands-on managers, and unlike some sun sign rising sign combinations, they cooperate with authority figures in the workplace. But that hands-on Scorpio quality, as well as Scorpio's innate fertility, might lead them to vocations that involve direct contact with the earth. And if Cancer's down-on-the-farm inclinations lead them to some aspect of agriculture, they'll find success growing corn, breeding rabbits, or other such ventures. When these folks are gentle and well-meaning, everything grows green and strong. Scorpios with Cancer rising accumulate things. Oh my, do they love to accumulate things. Antiques, family heirlooms, children, grandchildren, cats, dogs, you name it. And they are never ever wasteful. There's an avarice in both signs that often expresses itself through holding on to property. These Scorpios might hold the deeds to several parcels of land. They might be collectors. Sometimes they're like human magnets. But whatever accumulates, the Cancer personality maintains and nurtures it. If it's breathing and hungry and crosses their path, it will get fed, and it might not ever leave. If it's a car or a computer, it will be maintained impeccably. Cancer's emotional subjectivity, however, can stir up trouble for these Scorpios if they're too thin-skinned and inclined to hold everything in, hanging on to emotional hurts until they grow into long-time resentments. They feel the weight of the world and responsibility for everything. They need to lighten up emotionally. Talking about things openly is always helpful and often necessary, but they're not usually inclined to do so. Mysterious Scorpio and overly cautious Cancer can't allow themselves to feel vulnerable. Holding things in and not talking about them is so much easier. The better strategy for Scorpios born mid-evening is to learn from, but not cling to, the past and to move forward, accumulating friends and earning adoration for the helpful things they do in the course of a long, industrious, productive day. It's always their positive contributions for which they're treasured.